A busy wife hired a house girl to care for her husband, then everything changed. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I had always been focused on my career. As a marketing executive, my days were full of meetings, deadlines, and endless work calls. My husband, Ethan, was supportive, but I knew he deserved more attention than I could give him. I loved him deeply, but time was never on my side. That's why I decided to hire someone to help, someone who could look after him when I couldn't. Maya came into our lives like a breath of fresh air. She was young, polite, and seemed genuinely kind. Her smile had a warmth that made her instantly likable. When I first met her, she spoke confidently about her experience with household care, and I felt a wave of relief. Finally, someone I could trust to keep Ethan comfortable while I handled my responsibilities. At first, everything seemed perfect. Maya made sure Ethan's mornings were smooth, breakfast ready, clothes organized. I watched from the doorway one day as she chatted with him while he read the newspaper, and I felt a small sense of pride. I had done the right thing. My husband looked relaxed, and Maya seemed genuinely attentive. It all appeared harmless, even comforting. But then, little things started to catch my attention. Ethan would sometimes forget to mention small details to me, things I knew he would normally share. He seemed distracted at times, and Maya was always nearby, quietly guiding him. I shook it off. I told myself I was imagining things. After all, I had brought her in to help. She was supposed to make our lives easier, not complicated. Still, a tiny voice in the back of my mind warned me that not everything was as simple as it seemed. Maya's attentiveness sometimes felt too precise, too calculated, but I quickly dismissed the thought. I had no reason to doubt her. She had been recommended, her references were good, and she seemed completely harmless. Yet, as I left for work each morning, a part of me couldn't help but glance back, watching the way she moved around our home, the way Ethan's expression softened when she was near. Something subtle had shifted, but I told myself it was nothing. After all, I was busy, exhausted, and probably overthinking. That first week passed without incident. I told myself everything was fine. But deep down, I sensed that this simple decision, hiring someone to care for the person I loved most, was about to change everything in ways I couldn't yet imagine. The comfort I felt now was fragile, and I couldn't shake the feeling that my trust, so easily given, might be the very thing that would put my world at risk. At first, I tried to ignore the little changes in Ethan. But slowly, I started noticing things I couldn't quite explain. He would pause before answering questions I knew he should know the answer to, and sometimes he seemed lost in thought, staring off at nothing. It wasn't just forgetfulness, there was a distance in his eyes, a quiet tension that hadn't been there before. Maya, of course, was always nearby. She would swoop in with suggestions or reminders, always careful to seem helpful. Maybe Ethan would like to try this, she'd say, or, I noticed he seemed a little off this morning, I thought I'd check on him. Her voice was gentle, polite, but something about the way she lingered around him made me uneasy. I started paying more attention, noticing how she always knew when Ethan needed something, even before he asked. She made little gestures that seemed harmless, fixing his tie, preparing his favorite snack, but her timing was perfect every single time. It felt too perfect, and yet, when I tried to bring it up to myself, I dismissed it as paranoia. After all, I had brought her into our home to make life easier, not to cause stress. Ethan, on his part, began to act differently without realizing it. He seemed more reliant on Maya's presence, asking for her opinion on small decisions, things he never would have asked me. He would smile at her in ways he hadn't smiled at me in weeks, and my chest tightened every time I saw it. I told myself I was imagining it. I was tired, busy, probably seeing threats where there were none. But the unease didn't go away. Sometimes, when I came home early, I would catch Maya leaning in close, whispering something to Ethan, and he would nod quietly, listening as though her words were more important than mine. My stomach churned, but I forced a smile, pretending everything was normal. I began observing more, trying to see patterns. Maya always seemed to know the right moment to appear. She offered advice subtly, never overtly telling Ethan what to do, but guiding him quietly in ways I couldn't control. And Ethan, oblivious to the tension it created, followed along willingly, trusting her judgment more than he had trusted mine in days. Even as I tried to focus on work, a small part of me stayed home, watching, worrying. Something felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Was I overreacting? Or was there really something hidden behind Maya's friendly smile? Every day, the tension grew, a silent question hanging in the air: could I trust her? Could I trust Ethan? The answers weren't clear, and the worry in my chest kept building. I felt trapped in my own home, unsure who was truly looking out for the person I loved most. And that little doubt, that tiny spark of suspicion, was just the beginning. One evening, I came home earlier than usual, hoping to surprise Ethan with dinner. As I entered the living room, I froze. Ethan was sitting on the couch, talking to Maya in a way I had never heard before. His voice was soft, almost confiding, and she was listening intently, nodding and offering quiet advice. I could feel my chest tighten as I realized he was sharing things with her, things he hadn't shared with me in months. I stayed hidden for a moment, trying to understand. They laughed lightly at a memory Ethan mentioned, and I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. It wasn't just casual conversation. He was opening up to her about worries, dreams, even fears, personal things he had once trusted me with, now given to someone else. Maya's face was calm, gentle, encouraging, but there was something calculated about the way she leaned closer, how she listened so carefully. When I finally stepped forward, Maya turned, her smile bright but too controlled. "Oh, Rachel. I didn't expect you back so soon," she said sweetly, but her eyes didn't match the warmth in her voice. Ethan looked surprised to see me too, but there was a hesitation in his expression, a subtle awkwardness that cut me deeper than words could. That night, I lay in bed feeling hollow. I kept replaying their conversation in my mind, trying to pinpoint when things had shifted. I thought about the small comments Maya had made before, innocent suggestions, reminders, little compliments, and realized they had been carefully placed to make Ethan doubt me. Suddenly, everything clicked. The distractions, the subtle persuasion, the way Ethan sometimes looked at her with trust one hadn't seen in months. It wasn't harmless at all. I felt betrayed, not just by Maya, but by Ethan, the person I had trusted most. The hurt was sharp, real, like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. I wanted to cry, to scream, to ask why he had stopped confiding in me, why he had let someone else take my place in his heart for those moments. Confusion mixed with anger. How had I not seen this coming? How had I been so blind? That night, sleep didn't come. I kept thinking about the intimacy of their conversations, how easy it was for Ethan to share with her, how much he relied on her guidance and attention. It was like a knife twisting in my chest, the betrayal deeper than anything I could have imagined. My mind kept returning to the moment I stepped into the room, the awkward looks, the polite lies, the truth I couldn't ignore. For the first time I understood that trust, once shaken, left a cold emptiness that nothing could fill. I felt alone in my own home, surrounded by people who should have cared most for me, yet seemed to forget the very foundation of our relationship. And in that quiet, heart-wrenching moment, I realized that my life, the life I had carefully built, was about to change in ways I had never anticipated. Lately, Ethan seemed different in ways that made my heart ache. Small disagreements, the kind that used to blow over in a few minutes, were turning into arguments. He would snap over tiny things, like leaving a glass on the counter or forgetting to pick up a few groceries. Each time, Maya was nearby, quietly guiding him, saying things like, "Maybe she didn't mean it that way," or "I think she just got busy." Her voice sounded gentle, but it carried weight, and Ethan listened. It didn't take long for me to see the pattern. Maya's presence was no longer just helpful, it was shaping our interactions. She always seemed to be there when tensions rose, inserting herself as the mediator. Ethan relied on her perspective more than mine, and I felt the invisible wall between us growing taller with each passing day. I began to feel a mix of emotions I couldn't easily untangle. I loved Ethan, but I couldn't ignore the betrayal that ran beneath the surface. How had I allowed someone else to step into the space I once held in his life? Every smile he gave her, every question he asked her opinion on, felt like a tiny wound, cutting deeper than any argument could. I wanted to yell, to demand that he see what was happening, but part of me knew that confrontation without a plan would only push him further away. I found myself watching them, trying to understand how Maya had gained such influence. She never pushed or forced anything, her manipulation was subtle, careful, invisible to anyone who wasn't paying close attention. She planted doubts quietly, made small suggestions that slowly eroded trust, and always left Ethan thinking he had come to the conclusions himself. The more I observed, the angrier I felt, but the anger was mixed with fear. Fear that I had been too trusting, too distracted by my work, and that the person I loved most had been slipping away without me even noticing. I realized I couldn't act recklessly, I had to be patient, careful, strategic. At the same time, a small, determined spark ignited inside me. I couldn't let this continue. I couldn't let Maya quietly reshape my marriage. I began thinking about ways to reveal the truth, ways to show Ethan what had been happening without pushing him away completely. My mind was full of plans, quiet strategies, and careful observations. I wasn't just hurt anymore, I was ready to fight for my marriage, my home, and my dignity. That night, as I lay awake, I made a silent promise to myself. I would not let betrayal define my life. I would reclaim the trust and love I had lost, but I would do it in a way that left no room for doubt. The time for passive hurt was over. A new, determined part of me was awakening, ready to turn the pain into action. And just like that, the first step toward my response, toward reclaiming what was mine, had quietly begun. One afternoon, while sorting through some bills and receipts, I noticed something strange. A few expenses didn't add up. Small amounts here and there, groceries, household items, errands, that I hadn't approved. At first, I thought it was a mistake, maybe an oversight. But as I checked more closely, patterns started to appear. There were messages on the tablet, notes about errands Maya had supposedly completed, and details that didn't match what Ethan had told me. It hit me slowly, like cold water. Maya had been lying, not about big things at first, but about little details that seemed innocent on the surface. The more I looked, the clearer it became that she had been twisting facts, bending the truth, and hiding information. Ethan trusted her completely, unaware of the manipulation. He would casually mention her help and advice, never suspecting that it came with hidden motives. I felt a rush of hurt, sharp and raw, and anger followed closely behind. The betrayal wasn't just about her lies, it was about the trust one had given freely, the quiet influence she had built over our lives, and the fact that my husband had unknowingly allowed it. My chest ached with a mix of grief and fury. How had I been so blind? How could someone so young, so seemingly harmless, manipulate the person I loved without him realizing it? But even as the pain settled in, a sense of determination began to grow. I couldn't act rashly. Confronting Maya without proof would only make me look paranoid, and I knew Ethan might take her side if I had nothing solid to show. So I started gathering evidence quietly, carefully, recording the lies and inconsistencies, noting times, messages, and small details she had manipulated. Every piece I found made the pattern undeniable. Maya's behavior wasn't accidental or harmless, it was calculated. She had been positioning herself at the center of our home, slowly eroding trust, and isolating me without anyone noticing. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how clever and subtle her manipulation had been. She had weaponized small truths to create a narrative favorable to her, all while making Ethan believe he was seeing reality clearly. I felt a strange mix of empowerment and rage. Hurt was still there, lingering in my chest, but it was now accompanied by clarity. I understood the game she had been playing, and for the first time, I knew I could fight back, but I had to do it carefully. Every lie, every deception, was now a piece of the puzzle I could use to reclaim control of my home and my marriage. That night, I went to bed with a quiet resolve. Maya had underestimated me, and Ethan had unknowingly given her power. But I wasn't going to let the betrayal define my life. I would gather the truth, plan my steps carefully, and make sure that when the time came, everything she had hidden would be revealed, and justice would be served. The first seeds of my response were planted, and I could feel the momentum building. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was ready to act. After discovering Maya's lies, I realized that reacting too soon could backfire. I decided to act like everything was normal, keeping my hurt hidden. Every morning, I smiled at Ethan, talked casually, and thanked Maya for her help, all while carefully watching her every move. I had to learn her patterns, understand how she influenced him, and find the moments where her control was weakest. I noticed how Maya positioned herself at key times, mealtimes, when Ethan was making decisions, even during casual conversations. She always made herself seem indispensable, guiding him without appearing controlling. But her timing was predictable once I paid attention. I began noting the small details, what phrases she used, how she phrased suggestions, when she tried to isolate me from him emotionally. At the same time, I studied Ethan. I knew he loved me, but I also saw how much he depended on Maya's approval in certain situations. That became my advantage. If I could gently nudge him to question Maya's motives, he would start seeing the truth himself. I didn't need to expose her immediately, I only needed to plant tiny seeds of doubt, carefully and subtly, while keeping Maya unaware. It was strange to feel this shift inside me. For weeks, I had felt hurt, powerless, and betrayed. Now, I felt a growing strength. I was no longer just a victim of their manipulation. I was learning to think strategically, observing quietly, planning every move, and anticipating their actions. Every little insight became a tool I could use when the right moment came. Maya, meanwhile, seemed bolder than ever. She smiled, offered advice, and inserted herself into every decision Ethan made. She had no idea that I was watching, taking notes, and quietly guiding the situation back toward me. Her confidence made her reckless, and her overconfidence was something I could exploit. I began small, letting Ethan notice tiny contradictions in her words or actions. I asked neutral questions that prompted him to think, subtly encouraging him to reflect on what Maya had told him. I didn't accuse, I didn't confront, I only guided, gently and carefully, letting him draw his own conclusions. Each subtle nudge brought him closer to seeing the truth. As days passed, I felt a quiet satisfaction. The fear and despair I had carried were giving way to focus and patience. I wasn't reacting to their manipulation anymore, I was anticipating it, shaping the outcome without them realizing it. Maya was still confident, still pushing, still trying to control the narrative, but the balance was slowly shifting. For the first time in weeks, I felt in control. I wasn't angry recklessly, I wasn't lashing out. I was waiting, observing, planning. And when the time came to act, everything they had done to hurt me would be turned against them, carefully, deliberately, and with the full weight of truth on my side. I knew it was time. I had gathered enough proof, observed enough patterns, and planted enough doubts for Ethan to start seeing the truth. I didn't rush. I wanted the moment to be clear, undeniable, and final. One evening, I asked Ethan to sit with me in the living room. Maya was there too, tidying up, unaware that the confrontation was about to unfold. I started calmly, showing Ethan the messages, the receipts, the notes, everything I had quietly collected. I explained what I had noticed, the little lies, the manipulations, the ways Maya had subtly isolated us. At first, Ethan looked confused, struggling to process what he was hearing. His brows furrowed, and I could see his mind racing, trying to reconcile the woman he trusted with the actions I was revealing. Rachel. I didn't realize, he whispered, his voice full of shock. The weight of betrayal hit him in that moment. I could see guilt creeping into his expression, mixed with disbelief. He had never wanted to hurt me, but the truth was undeniable. Maya had been influencing him, shaping his thoughts, and he had trusted her completely. Maya, on the other hand, reacted immediately. Her calm demeanor faltered. She tried to explain herself, to twist the story, but the evidence was too clear. Her eyes flashed with envy and frustration. It was like a mask had been ripped away. Suddenly, her true motives were visible. She wanted control, influence, and power over my family, and she had enjoyed watching the chaos she created. Her voice grew sharp, defensive, but the carefully measured calm she had always displayed was gone. Ethan turned to me, his face full of regret. "I never wanted this to happen," he said, shaking his head. "I should have seen it. I should have listened to you." My heart ached seeing him feel the betrayal so deeply, but I knew he had been genuinely deceived. This wasn't about punishing him, it was about revealing the truth so we could take back our lives. Maya continued to argue, but her words lost power. Each lie I had documented, each pattern I had noted, came together to form a clear picture. Ethan could see it all now, and the realization hit him hard. I watched as shock, sadness, and anger mixed on his face. It was painful, but necessary. The manipulation that had quietly poisoned our home was finally exposed. For the first time in weeks, the tension in the room shifted. Maya's influence crumbled, and Ethan's trust in me began to rebuild. The confrontation wasn't easy, it was raw, emotional, and filled with heartbreak, but it was real. The betrayal had been laid bare, and there was no turning back. In that moment, I realized something important. Truth, patience, and careful planning were more powerful than anger. Maya's control was gone, and we could finally begin the process of healing and rebuilding what she had tried to destroy. After the confrontation, I knew I couldn't stop at just showing Ethan the truth. Maya had caused enough damage, and I needed to make sure her influence ended completely. I decided to turn her own tactics against her, using the very strategies she had used to manipulate us. But I did it quietly, carefully, without anger or drama, because real change didn't need shouting. I started by pointing out her inconsistencies in small, natural ways. When Maya tried to insert herself into decisions, I calmly asked questions that revealed contradictions in her stories. "I thought you said this yesterday," I would note casually, or, "That's interesting, it doesn't match the notes here." Nothing was accusatory, just facts. The more she tried to explain, the clearer it became that her lies couldn't hold up under careful observation. Ethan noticed too. At first, he was hesitant, unsure how to feel. But as he saw Maya's stories crumble one by one, he began to understand her true character. The soft, guiding persona she had shown him vanished, replaced by defensiveness and excuses. It was a quiet revelation, but powerful. Ethan could finally see the contrast between the woman he loved, me, and the woman who had tried to take my place. I also began asserting boundaries calmly but firmly. I made clear what was acceptable in our home and what wasn't. Maya could no longer insert herself between us, her influence had limits. Every attempt to overstep was met with observation and subtle correction. I wasn't yelling, I wasn't dramatic. I was simply reclaiming my space, showing that control of my home and my marriage belonged to me. Maya's confidence faltered. The same carefully crafted smile that had once hidden her envy now seemed fragile, forced. Every attempt to manipulate backfired quietly, and Ethan's trust in her began to dissolve completely. She realized, too late, that her schemes had been turned against her, and there was no way to recover. I felt a sense of satisfaction, not from cruelty, but from justice. The lies that had threatened to undo our lives were exposed. The person who had tried to take advantage of our love and trust could no longer hide behind charm and subtlety. Ethan and I could finally move forward together, with clarity and honesty. It was a turning point. I regained not only emotional control but also peace in my home. The manipulation, the tension, and the fear of betrayal were gone. Maya's schemes had failed, and we were free to rebuild. For the first time in weeks, I felt steady and strong, knowing that patience, observation, and quiet strategy had restored balance. The revenge wasn't loud or dramatic, it was deliberate, smart, and effective. And in that quiet, victorious moment, I realized that protecting what mattered most sometimes required patience more than anger, and subtlety more than confrontation. After Maya left, our home felt lighter, almost as if a heavy weight had been lifted. The tension that had shadowed every room was gone, replaced by a quiet, tentative calm. Ethan and I didn't speak much at first, but there was a new awareness between us, a mutual understanding that things had changed and that we needed to rebuild what had been shaken. We started small. Simple conversations over dinner, sharing our day, and checking in on each other's feelings. No accusations, no defensiveness, just honest words. At first, it felt awkward, almost fragile, but each exchange slowly helped restore the connection we had lost. Trust had to be rebuilt piece by piece, and we both committed to making it happen. I reflected a lot during this time. I realized how easily boundaries could be crossed when I wasn't paying attention and how important it was to communicate clearly and consistently. It wasn't just about catching lies or manipulation, it was about protecting the relationship through vigilance and openness. I understood that love alone wasn't enough, care, attention, and mutual respect were equally important. Ethan also reflected. He admitted his own mistakes, the times he had relied on Maya without considering my perspective. He apologized for unintentionally letting her influence grow, and I could see the sincerity in his words. It wasn't easy for either of us, but acknowledgement and honesty became the foundation of our healing. Maya's departure brought a strange sense of closure. She had tried to gain control, to manipulate, and to divide us, but ultimately, her actions taught a lesson about greed and envy. She left quietly, her schemes exposed, and we were left with the clarity and peace she had tried to take away. Her absence reminded me that strength often comes from overcoming challenges rather than avoiding them. As the days passed, I felt my own sense of dignity return. I no longer carried the constant worry or fear that had haunted me. The confidence I had regained wasn't just about reclaiming my home, it was about knowing I could protect what mattered most. I had learned to observe, act, and stand firm without losing my composure or sense of self. Our relationship began to feel like it had before, but stronger, deeper, and more resilient. Ethan and I laughed again, shared moments without tension, and started planning small things for our future. The betrayal had tested us, but it had also shown us what mattered and reminded us to never take each other for granted. In the quiet of our restored home, I realized that healing wasn't just about forgiving or moving on, it was about reclaiming peace, dignity, and the ability to trust fully again. And for the first time in weeks, I felt truly at home, emotionally safe, and ready to move forward with strength and clarity. Sitting quietly one evening, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened, the lies, the betrayal, and the silent games that had almost torn my life apart. The memory of Maya's calculated smile, Ethan's unknowing trust, and the tension that had filled our home came back in waves. It was painful to remember, but it also reminded me how far I had come. I thought about my own journey through it all. At first, I had felt powerless, hurt, and completely betrayed. I had let my trust be taken for granted, and I had underestimated how easily manipulation could creep into a marriage. But slowly, through careful observation, patience, and quiet action, I had reclaimed control. I realized that true strength wasn't just reacting with anger, it was about thinking clearly, staying composed, and acting with purpose. The experience taught me something vital: courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers in quiet moments when you decide to stand your ground and take the steps needed to protect yourself and those you love. Intelligence and patience were my weapons, and through them, I turned a situation that could have destroyed everything into an opportunity for growth and understanding. Looking at Ethan, I could see the lessons he had learned too. He understood the importance of awareness, communication, and valuing the people who care for him most. The ordeal had tested him as much as it had tested me, and we had come through it stronger. Our bond had survived the deception, and in many ways, it had been strengthened by the challenges we faced together. I also realized that love isn't about perfection, it's about commitment, trust, and resilience. Love doesn't vanish when mistakes are made or when betrayal occurs, it survives when we choose to fight for it wisely. My love for Ethan had not weakened, if anything, it had become clearer and more determined. I knew now that no outside influence could break the connection we had if we remained honest and vigilant with each other. As I reflected, a sense of calm washed over me. The fear, the anger, and the tension had all been replaced by understanding, clarity, and gratitude. I had learned to trust my instincts, to act with patience, and to value my own strength. My life felt safer, more balanced, and richer in wisdom than it had ever been before. In the quiet of that evening, I smiled at the thought that the ordeal had not defeated me, it had refined me. I felt satisfied knowing that justice had quietly been served, that betrayal had been met with clarity, and that love had endured. The experience had left a lasting mark, but it had also left me stronger, wiser, and more confident in my ability to protect what truly matters. And in that moment, I understood fully, the trials I had faced had revealed my strength, tested my courage, and shown me that love, when protected carefully and nurtured wisely, could withstand even the deepest deception.